Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast, where we will explore the cause and effect of just saying yes in your everyday life or in business. I will dig into topics that are not just stimulating, but will challenge you to be better in everything you do. The podcast is based on the simplicity of saying yes to opportunities you might encounter every single day. I'm your host, Jim Riley. Join me in my first series titled Blue Collar Redefined. Hey, if you have not guessed by now, this show is brought to you by Baja United Wines, BajaUnitedWines.com, where you can get all the latest and greatest products, wines from Baja, Mexico. We actually import from the Valle de Guadalupe, and we are working with some of the most incredible wineries down there, like Monte Chinique, Las Nubes, Venacava, Relieve, Santo Tomas, and many, many more. If you go on BajaUnitedWines.com as a listener of the show, type in the code F for a 10% discount on checkout. And if you buy more than 2 bottles, it's free shipping. So, I thought with this week's show, I've got a great guest coming up. And I think that with the show being the answer is yes, and people saying yes to opportunities now, hopefully you've been paying attention, you might need some tools to put in your toolkit to get started, whether that's in business or marketing or a new career, or you're going to start your own thing. And once in a while, I'm going to have guests on that will help you with that venture and where you're going. And hopefully you can, get your feet off the ground a little bit quicker through some of the guests and the advice that they have or the services that they provide. I received something in the mail a couple weeks ago from an old friend who moved away to Texas. And I got a letter from him, as well as a little, I guess it's like a desk token. It's made out of silver, and it's like a paperweight. So anyways, he asked me for my address, and he didn't say what he was sending, so I kind of forgot about it because it wasn't on my radar in the first place. But I received this letter from him, and it's just amazing how much impact we have on one another. And I want to be just a reminder to you and the impact that you might be on someone else in your life without even knowing it. People are paying attention more than you might think, whether that's on Facebook or Instagram or just in general, where it's on the job, walking down the hallway, how you treat others. I'm always cognizant of my kids watching me. My daughter called me out a couple weeks ago. I put her in the car seat at Target, and I was going to do the old, just put the shopping cart over in the planter, near the car, and not walk all the way back to the cart area. And she goes, "Daddy, you're being lazy." And I'm like, "What?" She goes, "The cart goes in the cart area." I mean, she's 4, and she called me out on that. So of course I pushed it all the way over to the cart area. But it's just, like I said, it's amazing how much people are paying attention, including your own kids. So, so back to this letter that I received. I'm going to read it because I think it's very impactful for me, and it's just proof that you are probably impacting somebody else. So it says, "Hey Jim, hope you and your beautiful family are living the American dream. This was given to me from the lady at the gym that asked me to be her life coach. You can read her letter to me as I've provided in this same envelope. It's corny, but I think the meaning behind it carries something worth sharing. Anyway, the purpose of it is to pass it along to those that inspire you, and you were one of the first people that came to mind. I'll never forget that day you walked into my garage, into my kitchen, and asked me if I wanted a job. Up until that point, you'd always just been the cool dude across the street with sweet cars that always overpaid for whatever crap I was selling for a school fundraiser. Laugh out loud. But I will forever be thankful for you walking through that door, because from that day forward, you opened my eyes to the world of entrepreneurship and the endless possibilities life has to offer. From driving my dream truck to meeting NBA Hall of Famer Bill Walton, there's an endless list of experiences and knowledges I gained from the opportunities you afforded me. With that said, you were a critical component in my life that inspired me to be relentless, pursue my dreams, and never look back. You helped light that inner flame that continues to burn until this day. Thank you, Jim." Michael. Like I said, it was just an impactful letter that I received from somebody that I've known over the years. Now, Michael was the neighborhood kid, and I could always tell that he was, he played sports and always wanting more, and just it was a really good kid. Always said hi when I pulled up in the car, and I didn't really know him or his family that well. But I needed some work done around the house and little odds and ends. And I went over and I asked his parents if I could ask him if he could do some work for me. And of course they agreed. And that's what Michael's referring to in this letter that I walked into his garage and into his kitchen. And it started a relationship between he and I that continued on for several years as we lived in the same neighborhood, including at one point I was having him drive me around in my car to help me with some work stuff. But, I never realized I was impacting him the way that I did. And I'm so glad that the story unfolded this way, that I was a positive influence on him. And he's out pursuing his dreams. I've touched base with him a few times recently to see what he's doing. And he is, like he said, living his dream of being an entrepreneur and never giving up. So, again, let this serve as a reminder to you that you're probably affecting somebody out there, whether you know it or not, whether they tell you or not. So keep doing what you're doing. It's a positive impact for sure. So today's guest, like I said, I'm starting to deliver some mechanics for you to utilize in your own adventure of saying yes to things. So let's turn it over to the show. Hello and welcome to the Answers Yes podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate all your comments and feedback the last week or two on our shows and our guests, and we've just been having a lot of fun. Just a quick shout out to Erin, who was on our show last week. She was the country music star out here in LA. And if you don't follow her on her social media, she was actually affected by all those fires and the shooting. So our heart and prayers go out to her for just being around kind of that scene and the trouble that's been happening up there. So, Erin, we're so glad you're safe and sound, and we really appreciated you sharing your story on our podcast. All right, well, not to disappoint this week, I've got another great guest, and I've received a lot of calls and emails about how to start a podcast, how to get into marketing, social media, and all those other great things. I think I've got the perfect guest today to talk about that. I want to welcome to the show Naresh Vissa. Is that correct? Vissa is your last name?
Vissa, yeah.
Vissa, yeah. Thank you so much. You found me on the internet. I think we have some either common friends or connections out there. So thanks for reaching out. We appreciate you being on the show today.
No, it's a pleasure to be on. Looking forward to the talk.
Yeah, so as you know, through our brief bio on the show itself, it's about saying yes to things. And I know in our brief discussion prior to turning on the recorder here, you were telling me a little bit about your background and how you were discovered on LinkedIn. And I'd love if you can spend just a minute or two on your background with our listeners to tell us where you came from and how you were discovered on LinkedIn, and then we can progress through your career from that standpoint.
Yeah, well, I started out in traditional media as a reporter, journalist in print, radio, and television. So not only did I write, but I also was in front of the camera, on air, anchoring, directing, producing, you name it. And that's initially what I went to school for. I have experience working at major media companies, CNN Radio back when it was still around. I produced a couple of shows there. And this was all pre-financial crisis. So financial crisis happened. The media industry went through a major transformation. That entire industry is essentially disrupted by the internet.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that I lost interest in it because of that, but because of the financial crisis, I gained more of an interest in business and finance. So I went to business school, got some experience working on Wall Street and for various financial firms. And while I was in graduate school, a company, so what turned out to be the largest financial marketing company in the world, most likely, they found me on LinkedIn. They just typed in a few keywords because they were looking for somebody who had a specific background and skill set. And I was one of a handful of people who popped up. So they got in touch with me. They emailed me and said, hey, we have this project. We're trying to find some people who fit the mold of this project, and your background seems to fit the mold. How about we hop on a call? So long story short, I was consulting for them while finishing up my master's degree. And then after I graduated, moved up to Baltimore, Maryland, took over that project full time, ran the division. The division was an online radio network.
Yeah.
So this was back in 2011, before podcasting hit the mainstream. And I even told them up front, I said, my background is in terrestrial radio, AM, FM. I don't really know much about podcasting. And at the time, there really weren't that many people who knew anything about podcasting. And they said, oh, well, you have the background and the experience, we'll figure it out. And so after I joined full time, I think I did figure it out. We found the monetization model. The company, the division started doing quite well, and it has since grown. In fact, parts of it were sold to another company, and it's still doing quite well. And when I left that company, started my own company, Push Media and Marketing, podcast production, podcasting services, and consulting became one of our founding divisions. So fast forward to almost 8 years later, and now we have helped launch, consult for, manage, produce, run at least 60 different podcasts.
Yeah.
And we currently help do all of our current clientele in the podcasting space is probably at least 25 podcasts right now.
Wow.
So I also wrote a best-selling book called Podcastnomics, a book of podcasting to make you millions. That came out 4 years ago. Still, again, when podcasting was just kind of, or not even kind of, it wasn't very well known. I came out with the book to essentially educate the public on podcasting, what it is, how to listen to podcasts, how to start podcasts, how to make money off podcasts. It's a primer on everything podcasting. So I came out with that book about 4 years ago, and it's gone on to sell more than 10,000 copies. So the timing of that book was definitely crucial and clutch.
Wow. Well, I appreciate the background and getting us up to present day. I want to dig into a few things that you just brought up from your past. And I think the biggest thing that resonates with me up front, especially for our listeners, is how important the role that LinkedIn played for you. And as you mentioned, that was back in 2011. And really, the site wasn't that big then. People were just dabbling a little bit. And now, of course, it's a mega site. What drove you to put your information on LinkedIn at the time, and what type of information did you put on there that resonated enough for those search engines to find you?
Yeah, so I actually got on LinkedIn more than 10 years ago. So again, I guess I'm an early mover in some of these niches like podcasting and LinkedIn. So 10 years ago, LinkedIn was, nobody really knew what it was. I was on a message board. It was actually a sports message board. And somebody posted, they said, hey, there's this new thing called LinkedIn. This is where you want to be if you want to network, this is the future of professional networking. It's like a Facebook for professionals, and it's going to be huge. They're going to be one day there are going to be hundreds of millions of users on this site. So I just saw the message board, and I was like, okay, I'll just go ahead and create a username and profile and all that. So I went ahead and did it. I filled out all the fields, and within like a month or two, people took it much more seriously back then than they do now, because now everyone's on it.
Yeah.
But people were recommending each other, writing recommendations and friending each other, and actually using it as a business and networking tool. So I would say once every 6 months, I would update my LinkedIn with my resume stuff, accomplishments, grades, whatever, because I was in school at the time. And I never really imagined how I would use it. First, I started using it when I was job hunting as a college student. I would find alumni at my school on LinkedIn, and I would reach out to them and send them messages and try to get interviews at companies that they were working at. So that's how I initially used LinkedIn. And because I would frequently update my profile, little did I know that other people or other companies would also be on the lookout for somebody like me. And that's what happened in my case. The company typed in a few keywords, which they could not, they couldn't use Google or Facebook to find people. They couldn't solicit. They tried soliciting resumes through the traditional channels, and they weren't really getting the quality that they were looking for. Quality in the experience. So yeah, they found me, and that's why I tell people, whether it's LinkedIn, whether you're a business owner who runs a restaurant or a dry cleaner, get on Yelp, get on TripAdvisor, get on LinkedIn, if you're an attorney, get on Avo, get on all these sites, because the time cost to you is just, a few minutes. We're talking 15 to 20 minutes just to get up and running, set up, fill out your profile. And then now your visibility, you're visible to the entire world.
Yeah.
Anybody can find you.
Yeah.
So